Polling in British Columbia is showing that Premier David Eby and his NDP party are in real trouble with BC voters ahead of the next provincial election this fall. The problem is not just that the Conservatives have a lot of momentum, and in polls like this one from Research Co., they are catching up with the NDP as the NDP contracts in their support over the past few quarters. But also, there's other polls out there showing that the BC Conservatives are effectively tied with the NDP, considering many of these polls have about a 3 to 3.5% margin of error. The Conservatives' 32% compared to the NDP's 34% is effectively a statistical tie, and there's still 13% of voters that are undecided. And in past Mainstreet polls, when they've released their decided voter numbers, it's actually leaning quite heavily towards the Conservatives. This is the last poll they did of decided voters that showed that 40% of decided voters are going to vote for the Conservatives, with only 34% of people saying that they're going to be voting NDP who are decided. But there's a deeper problem that the NDP have. It's that they have a very narrow band of voters that they actually appeal to. It's voters who live in downtown Vancouver and who live in Victoria, mostly white voters, where the Conservatives have a far broader demographic of people who will actually show up and vote for them. So check out these deep statistics from the recent Mainstreet poll of the different demographic groups support. So with white voters, the BC NDP have 34.3% compared to the Conservatives' 30.9%. Black voters, the Conservatives are winning them 38.5 to the NDP's 21.7. East Asian, the NDP has 34.6 and the Conservatives have 37.4. Latino voters are going 51.8% towards the Conservatives and only 29.7% towards the NDP. Middle East voters are undecided at 40%, so I think that's a demographic nobody can really, tag yet on who they're going to end up supporting. South Asian voters are only going 11.7% towards the NDP, with 50.1% of them going towards the Conservatives. Southeast Asian, the NDP are winning at 41.7 to the Conservatives' 29.8. First Nations, the NDP are also winning at 54.2 to the Conservatives' 21.4. The problem with actually leading with First Nations voters, though, is that there's only 200,000 First Nations in British Columbia, and most of them are in rural areas where there's a lot more Conservative voters of different groups who tend to outweigh them. This is just how politics works. I'm not trying to break everything down by ethnic group and saying, oh, there's an Indian guy over there, he must be voting Conservative, or there's a First Nation guy, he must be voting NDP. Obviously, everyone's an individual, but this gives you a good snapshot of where the different parties are at. The Conservatives are doing really well with groups who live in the suburban areas and the rural areas. The problem for the NDP is that they are only appealing to very overeducated white voters in downtown centers. That is where the vast majority of the muscle from their vote is coming from. It's white voters in downtown Vancouver and Victoria and some Southeast Asian voters. But overall, it's mostly white voters. That's the kind of the funny thing whenever the NDP goes after the Conservatives as this old white man party. It's like, actually, it's the more diverse party when you look at it, especially among South Asian voters. There are tons of South Asian people in British Columbia, and they are a big voting demographic. They are big into small business, and so they cannot stand the drug decriminalization and anti-small business policies of David Eby's government. When I say anti-small business, I mean high taxes and doing nothing about the rampant rate of crime around the major cities. This is a big issue for those voters, and they're not going to be swayed back over to the NDP. The problem for the NDP is, like this past Mainstreet poll of decided voters shows, it shows that people who are voting Conservative are pretty sure about it. People voting NDP, because when you look at this recent poll, this is a lot like the last Mainstreet poll of all voters. When you actually look at all voters, about a third or a quarter of the NDP's vote is not very sure at all if they're actually going to be voting for the NDP. And this also showed there were still 13% up for grabs. And if the undecided voters start splitting the way the decided voters do, that gives a massive advantage to the Conservatives. And many of the working class white voters and voters from different demographic groups who live in the suburbs are very much up for grabs for the Conservatives, where who's going to be swayed from the Conservatives to the NDP? If you're voting Conservative and not NDP, it's for very strong reasons. Where if you're voting NDP instead of Conservative, you're almost only doing it to fend off the Conservatives, not because you think they're going to do anything bad. They're going to get rid of all the policies that 78% of British Columbians think have been failing. Past polls that I've looked at show that on the vast majority of issues. I think there wasn't even a single issue they were above water on. But the NDP has anywhere from 56% on the less hot-blooded issues up to 78 to 80% of people thinking they're doing a poor job. This is a government in decline. It's really hard to bring people back when they think that you're an utter incompetent fool. Justin Trudeau is demonstrating that that doesn't work on a federal level. That if people have thought that you've really ruined their lives at some point, that they aren't able to live normally because of your terrible policies, it's hard to make an announcement about some reform you're going to make or new program you're going to release and have those like voters say, you know what, let's give them a second chance. Not how it works. People get very easily turned off by radical policies. People want normal, and they want the radical hippie David Eby out of office. The man is out of touch with British Columbia residents, and not only are the polling momentum shifting towards conservatives, but the turnout momentum is going to be great for the conservatives. As they door knock more, as they identify their voters, it's going to be way easier convincing a conservative voter to go out to vote for real change rather than NDP voters voting for the status quo, which is not particularly inspiring. This is actually why Stephen Harper lost re-election in 2015, even though he was obviously more qualified than Justin Trudeau or the NDP leader. Why can't I remember his name? Doesn't matter. He's completely irrelevant. Tom Mulcair. There you go. Even though Stephen Harper was far more qualified than those two, he was running a campaign that wasn't actually promising anything big. And promising something big doesn't mean spending, but it's saying that we're going to do this kind of revolutionary thing, in the sense that if he was in office in 2015 running for re-election saying we're going to do deep tax reform after this election, we're going to cut personal taxes by 2% per year for the next 4 years to make us the most competitive economy in the country, that's something that makes people think about actually going out and voting. The problem in 2015 is the conservative vote stayed home and the liberal vote came out. So even though the polling showed it was kind of a three-way split between the NDP, conservatives, and the liberals, the only party with motivated voters was the liberals. And I see that happening in British Columbia again. United voters aren't showing up. NDP voters aren't going to show up, but conservative voters will show up, especially from communities who are invested in the trades and small business and resource sectors, which the NDP has been taking a hammer to. There's nobody that's been taking a hammer to the things that the progressives love. These people feel like they've won over the past two elections, and they're unlikely to actually show up. But at the same time, the BC Conservatives still need your help. And I'm going to be very clear. They don't pay me for plugs. I just want people to get more involved in politics and realize the stakes of the game. If you live in BC, I believe you get 75% back in a tax credit if you donate up to $100. You should do that. $100 with which you're only really paying $25 of to donating to the BC Conservatives will help guarantee the NDP won't win. If you don't donate, you should never expect other people are going to donate on your behalf. No, that's technically illegal, but you know what I mean, that somebody else is going to donate if you don't donate. Donate, volunteer, get involved. If your family's voting NDP, you got to shame them for basically saying that people should keep deteriorating on the streets based on in this decriminalization environment that the NDP have created. Vote to get rid of SOGI, vote to get rid of decriminalization, lower taxes, all that great stuff. But you also need to help the BC Conservatives. So I have a donation link for them in the description of this video. But if you don't live in BC, you can always donate to my legal fund, also in the description of this video. It's the Give, Send, Go link. We're being sued by a billionaire developer for no reason. He hasn't even submitted any evidence on how we defamed him, supposedly, in more than 2.5 years of this case going on. Any donations really help take the burden of cost off myself. And then also, if you happen to live in the federal riding of Calgary Signal Hill on the west side of Calgary, I am running to be your next federal Conservative Party nominee. So if you're a Conservative member in that riding, mark me number 1 on your ballot so that we can make sure we have real Conservatives representing these strong Conservative ridings. And I don't want to forget, I always say also mark Michael Kim as a good number 2. It is a ranked ballot, and I would never want you to tell you to just vote for whoever else you want. Vote for the next best Conservative guy. The second most Conservative person in the race would be Michael Kim, and as time goes on, I'll try and determine who else would be the most conservative option. I still think I can win. I'm still pushing to win, but I'm never going to leave people flat-footed and saying, I don't care who you vote after me. That's just a childish way of doing politics. Anyways, have a great one, everyone, and I'll be back with another video later.